so early because the book, we're actually giving a sneak preview today because this particular book will not be out until the 28th here in the US and then on the 23rd in the UK, where our guest is joining us from. So our very special guest is Onyi Nwabineli, who is a Nigerian British head wrap aficionado, born in Benin, Nigeria. She grew up in Glasgow, the Isle of Man, and Newcastle, and now lives in London. She is the founder of Black Pens, a writing retreat for Black women and femmes, and co-founder of Surviving Out Loud, a fund that provides fiscal support for survivors of sexual assault. Her debut novel, Sunday Maybe, which many of you have probably read, was a Good Morning America and Book of the Month Club pick. So without any further delay, let's welcome Onyi to the BGC Book Club to talk about her latest book, Allow Me to Introduce Myself. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, Marcy. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yes, it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us to talk about your forthcoming novel.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes. So first of all, how did it feel the second time around?
Do you know what? It's been both easier and harder the second time around. I know that sounds weird, but the first book, I didn't have an agent and I had no deadline, so I could take my time.
Right.
The second time, I had deadlines, I had an agent, I had publishers. So in that respect, I wasn't worrying about that, but I was worrying about timelines and schedule. So in that respect, it was a little bit harder, but a lot of the stress had lifted and will anyone read this? So yeah.
Right. And you were very blessed that the first time around you were able to have your book selected by the Book of the Month Club and Good Morning America. How did that feel?
It still feels surreal. I still can't believe it actually happened. So I wasn't expecting it. I thought if one person reads this book, I would have succeeded. And then so many people have read it now and it's been received so well. And I feel honored and blessed to be able to say that I was picked for those things.
Absolutely. And just in reading this book, I can understand why, because you tell stories so well. You know, there's complexities in the characters and within the stories themselves. So I can definitely understand why all of that happened for you the first time. And I can see it happen the second time around as well, if it's not already in the works.
I hope, I pray. Thank you so much.
So allow me to introduce myself. First of all, this is such a beautiful cover. I love the cover of this.
It's gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, I love that. So obviously you had some say in determining what the cover of the book was going to look like.
I have fantastic publishers, so they always ask me what my vision for the cover is, if I have any notes that I want to give them. And I always give them notes and they incorporate everything that I ask for. So this cover, I was blown away the first time I saw it. I had no amends. Yeah. It was fantastic. So yeah.
Oh yeah. It definitely catches your attention because I am a head wrap girl today, not wearing it right now, but
yeah.
Just to see a Black woman in a head wrap and a colorful head wrap, that just automatically grabs your attention. But the story in and of itself is just so wonderful. So just a quick synopsis, because I'm one of the few who had a chance to actually read it, but just a quick synopsis of what the story is about, and then we can talk about some of the things, some of the themes that really stood out for me.
Sure. So the book centers around Anuri, who is a young girl. She's 25 at the time. She's narrating her story, and she's grown up in a household where her stepmother has kind of used her, not just her life and the family life, but mainly her life, to become this huge, big mommy blogger. And Anuri had grown up as a child influencer. And it's really her navigating how she feels about that now. Now that she's older and she has a younger sister who's, being pushed down the same path. It explores a few themes just around social media, the online presence of children, the autonomy of children in this social media age, and, asks us a lot of questions about the kind of media that we consume. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you really do dive deep into it. Of course, me being online myself, you know, but I'm here for books and telling stories and things like that. You will not see me sharing a lot of personal things necessarily. But, you know, there is that balance oftentimes that people have to decide when you want to be a quote unquote public figure, how much of your life are you really sharing? And then, you know, even from there, if there are children and things like that involved, you know, how much of them do you share?
Yeah.
So was there anything that was happening within your life personally that made you want to really look at this, do a deep dive into social media?
Well, not grew up, but like I used to consume a lot of that content, a lot of like family vlogging, a lot of mommy blogger, a lot of household lifestyle type content that centered around the family and kids and so on and so forth. And I always thought, you know, it's cute, it's harmless, you know, so on and so forth. But, you know, as I kind of started examining it a little bit more deeply, I thought, you know, it's cute. We think it's harmless, but these are kids that don't have a say in how their image and likeness and their snippets of their life is used online to market products, to, you know, gain followers and so on and so forth. And I thought, you know, they don't have any say in this. They don't consent to it, really. Is it all roses? Is it all rainbows? Is it all peachy? What actually is the downside of living this kind of life? And I have 3 godchildren who are very young and a niece and nephew who are very young. And I think about them and I'm like, I don't know how I'd feel if, you know, their parents like, to just be out, and their parents agree. They're like, they don't post pictures of their kids online that way and so on and so forth. And I fully support it because they're just like, you just don't know who is behind that screen and how it'll affect them when they're older. So yeah.
Right, that's such a thing because you have people who don't share at all, of course, and then there are people who overshare.
Yeah, there's 2 sides of the
right. It's something because I'm thinking, and the reality of it is, and you know, we see it in a little bit in the book as well, is that people don't have a problem being cruel towards children. So I mean, I'm thinking of, you know, Blue Ivy.
Yeah, of course.
Beyonce's daughter, how that was the big one that we were always hearing these negative things about her. It's changed somewhat now, but still, but just and she wasn't necessarily even trying to expose her daughters just because by nature of who she was. So for someone to purposely do it, it is really a certain psyche that you would have to get into to even think that that would be okay.
Yeah. And you know what? It's normalized. It's so normal now. Oh, you know, my daughter and my son, they look cute today as they're getting ready to go to school. I'm going to snap a picture and I'm going to post it on Twitter because I love my kid. Like there's a lot of the time, most of the time, I will say there's no negative intent behind sharing these, you know, sharing your children online. You just love them so much and you're proud of them and you want people to see that. However, unfortunately, the state of the world and the society we live in, something that can be completely harmless can be taken and turned into something that's so sinister. And unfortunately, these are things that we actually have to think about, especially when it comes to safeguarding kids. So yeah.
And in the story, of course, it's not just, I mean, that's a big part of it and what's going on and how Anuri is really trying to kind of reclaim her life after this. But we're also seeing a lot of other things going on. It's about family and familial relationships as well, because, you know, she, you know, and of course we don't do spoilers for anybody's watching, so we're not going to tell the whole thing. But it is a situation, this isn't saying too much, where she, you know, it was her stepmother who was making these decisions. And so there's a whole thing of now I have the stepmother who's putting me in this position. And then there's a father who isn't necessarily always having a lot to say about it. So I found that take interesting as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, and with her stepmother being a different race to Anuri, these are things that I wanted to explore as well, because as Black women, we see the world through, unfortunately, we have to see the world through the lens of our race as well as our gender and so on and so forth. And these are things that play into how we relate to each other online and how we relate to the world in general. And Anuri's stepmother being a different race to her, I really wanted to, I try to do it subtly, but call it, these things all factor into the way that she's marketed online and the way that she behaves and the fallout from that. And you mentioned her dad, who, like many parents, especially, I will say, especially like the old school African parents who have immigrated, they're not really au fait with like online internet social. I'm thinking of my parents. Right. And aside from Facebook, like the Twitters, the Instagrams, right, they don't really understand the TikToks. They don't even know what that is. So Anuri's dad kind of is this, he's not 100% removed, but he doesn't understand the implications. He understands them too late.
Absolutely. And you're saying, I'm thinking about my mom, she has a Facebook account, doesn't even have a picture on it. She's like, I put my picture on there for people to see my picture. That part. Yeah. And kind of the same with she's on Instagram, but same thing. She doesn't have a picture. She'll go on there I always say, you're on there to be nosy. You're not on there to really add anything or put anything. And then if somebody does tag her and say, what is this? So yeah. Definitely. And she's American. She's just, of a certain age. Yeah. That's just not her thing. But, looking at that, that would make a lot of sense, in reading the story, that of course he's a little bit removed just because of his history and where he's from. But then also he's a grieving father.
Yeah, he is. And he's trying to navigate all kinds of different things: grief, having moved from her homeland to somewhere else, a new relationship or newish relationship, and having a daughter and another daughter by someone else, and what that means, and balancing grandparents and so on and so forth. So Income is, I know a lot of people will react to Income very negatively. Income's the name of Anuri's dad. I know they will react to him very negatively, but at the core of all the characters that I write, I want to maintain some level of humanity in them. He is human. He's flawed. Like everybody in the story is flawed. So I hope people read him and try to understand how he has failed and why he has failed, but also still see the humanity in him. Yeah.
Definitely. And that's another thing that you do, even though it is told from Anuri's perspective, we get to see, there are snippets in the book where we hear from Ophelia, who is the stepmother, and Income, who are her father. So we do get to see like little snippets, so it's not just always her, but also what they're thinking or what they may be going through and stuff like that. And, to think of a man who becomes, a widower with a young baby, I can imagine that no matter where he's from or what his background is, that's going to be a challenge. And so to navigate that and to figure out, how to raise this child and then still be dealing with everything that centers his grief. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting, because my first book, Someday Maybe, dealt almost exclusively with grief, right? And there's more grief in this book, although it doesn't take up the majority of the book as it did with Someday Maybe. But it's an ongoing thing, and an ongoing lesson that I think all of us need to keep learning, is that grief does inform you and informs and influences so much of the way that you behave and your growth and how you move through the world. And it's, unfortunately, we are asked a lot of the time to ignore that in order to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. But it does, if grief is not allowed to be expressed and you don't know what to do with it, it even can affect the way that you relate to your children. So yeah.
Yes, and we definitely see that throughout the book. It just, even as you were saying that, I'm thinking, grief is not linear. There is no time limit, none of those things that oftentimes society kind of put on us, you should be quote unquote over that by now. That same way, but it'll creep up out of nowhere, years and years later. It could be a little thing. And I guess in a case like this, where this father has a daughter that puts him in mind of the wife that he lost, then that's a whole nother level.
Exactly. To be able to, or to have to raise a child, but every time you look at that child, you're reminded of everything that you lost. I mean, I've never been in that situation. I can't fully imagine what that must feel like. But again, it's just part, as I mentioned before, it's part of what makes Nkem who he is, which is a very, very flawed human being and a very, very flawed father figure. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But also looking at Ophelia, we get to see into who she is. Yes, she is the stepmom who is initially the intention was just, so people can kind of see or know what's going on with their relative who's living in another country, their granddaughter or niece, whatever the case may be. But it just becomes something so much bigger.
Yeah.
But we even see it would definitely be easy to villainize her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people will.
Right.
A lot of people will. I'm prepared for that. So, yeah.
Right. And I mean, in some ways she deserves it. But then on the other hand, because you as a writer took the time to actually give us little snippets of what's going on in her head and what she's experiencing, it kind of helps you understand it a little better.
Yeah. And I hope I have done that in a way that resonates with people, because again, Ophelia at the end of the day is a human being, and she is dealing with her own things as well, and she gets it wrong a lot. But I hope that with the little bits and pieces I've put in there, you can see her rationale behind some of the decisions that she makes, be it terrible decisions or good decisions. So yeah.
So I really love that Anuri, yes, she has, had this experience growing up, being in the public eye, didn't necessarily want to be in the public eye. And at times she lets people know, even as a young person, that this isn't it. This isn't what I want to do. But I love that along the way, even in spite of being in that thing that may have made her be more isolated, she did manage to find some friends, and I really love her friends in the book.
Yeah, her friends are my absolute favorite. So and it's again something I wrote, was a theme within Someday Maybe as well, is that the concept of community and having a village outside of your blood relatives is so important to me. My friends are my life, as well as my family and my extended family. I could not be where I am today, and I can't imagine navigating life without my friends. And I wanted to make it so that, yes, in many ways, Anuri's isolated in the experiences that she's gone through, but at the same time, she will always have and still has that. It might be a very finite, a very small circle, but they're people, they're her ride or dies, right? They will be there and have been there through literally everything. And again, they also love Anuri in a way that, because Anuri again is also very flawed, and she makes so many mistakes, and she's dealing with a lot, and she gets it wrong a lot, and her friends also get it wrong, and they love each other completely. They love each other, and they work through their problems and become closer as a result. And I wanted her to have that bedrock of friendship. Yeah.
It is so important to have that, for all of us. It really is. And chosen family is something that I will often talk about, because we didn't, the people that are blood related sometimes are going to be with you and good for you and good to you, and sometimes not. So it's just good to see. And that's the fact that they're not always in agreement with one another, that they have their little tips, and they, don't always pursue or do things in the same way. But at the end of the day, their friendship is at the core. And I think that's just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have pulled from my own personal experiences when I write about things like friendship and chosen family, when you have people that sometimes know you better than you know yourself, it becomes difficult to hide from yourself. And that was a really important thing for me to highlight within the novel, because there's certain things that Anuri she's charging down a particular path that she wants, but at the same time, there's things that she's overlooking, and her best friends Loki and Zimi, they kind of pull her back into herself a lot of the time and say, look, have you considered this? And, you know, I know your intentions are good, but are you in the right space in order to be pursuing this? And it's not, doesn't land very well all the time, but that's the problem with the truth, right? So sometimes we don't want to hear it. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes me think of, you know, friends that I have sometimes are like, girl, really? But you can do that with these people who are like a chosen family, you know, versus someone that you really know that well, that may be, you know, new in your atmosphere. You don't have that same level of comfort. But you know, throughout the book, of course, we're watching, and let me just ask you this, because there are periods in the book that are like real time. This is what's happening, and then there are times where there are flashbacks, so we can see, you know, what may have happened that led to the current situation. So in the process of crafting the story, was it difficult to do the back and forth, or did you like write certain parts and then come together and add the other parts, or did it just kind of flow in your writing process?
This time around with the second book, I learned from where I failed in the first, and I plotted everything out. I do chapter outlines, so I write in a pretty linear fashion. Like, however, I did completely change the ending like 4 weeks before my deadline. I completely changed it. Like, and it worked. I hope it worked. But yeah, I completely changed it. But I thought that sometimes I'm hesitant of putting too many flashbacks or relying on flashbacks to tell the story. But I felt that it was important for readers to gain insight and understand why Anuri is the way, not just Anuri, her dad and her stepmom and her sister and her friends. And it made sense to include some backstory and give some context to why these people behave the way they behave and why they are the way they are. And I think it worked. I didn't overdo it, but I just felt that it was really important to give readers a little bit more information about what led to the current events that are happening in the book. Yeah.
Well, as someone who's read it, I would say it did work. I told you, and I'm not just saying this for the camera. I told you that before we came on, before I hit record. So I feel that it did, you know, just because, I mean, yes, it caused you have to have your thinking cap on so you can kind of, you know, keep up with what's happening and when and where and when. But it definitely helps, because sometimes one of the things that, you know, as a reader or watching a movie or whatever the case may be, I don't like it when somebody just kind of throws me into the middle of a story and I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, same. Absolutely same. The way my brain works, I just need to, I'm neurodivergent. So, and I'm also someone that just has no problem asking questions. Why? I'm the why person. Even at my big age, I'm like, why are you doing that? Why are you like that? Why? No, give me some reason. Give me an explanation. I'm that kind of person. And I assume that lots of readers are like that as well. And I just wanted to provide something, not everything, but something, especially for key moments and key decisions that the family has made that have led to, you know, that have consequences that are playing out. I needed to try and give some kind of, you know, like I said, insight into why that has happened and when, and answer maybe a couple of the why questions I'm sure people will have when they read.
Right. Like, why is this happening? Why is she doing that? Or what would make her think that that's a good thing to do? Or whatever. But yes, it's like just thinking about the whole concept, and we talked about this a little bit at the top, the whole concept of someone being thrust into the spotlight and not really wanting to be in the spotlight. What this book really, for me, in a way, it's a different type of coming of age story for me. At least that's how I read it. Am I right?
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because I'm one of those people that think you can come of age at any age, and depending on the circumstances that led you to that point. And it's definitely a coming of age story, because it's, for Anuri, her life has not been a conventional type of life for a child. She hasn't been able to have some of the experiences that are, you know, that regular non-star children have had. You know, she's essentially become one of the main breadwinners of the house from infancy,
Right.
which is, something that child influencers have to reckon with, and that's not that's not a regular childhood to have.
No, not at
So
all.
yeah, she's come of age in a completely different way, and in a way, at 25, she's not mature.
Right.
She's mature in many ways, but in other ways it's like, no, I have to kind of learn things that maybe other kids who haven't had my life learnt when they were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But at 25, I hadn't had those experiences, so I'm having to learn it now. And again, I think there's a little bit of a lesson in there.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of reaches maturity at different times based on what's happened. It could be trauma, it just could be circumstances, it could be parents, it could be anything. In Anuri's case, it's because of the life that her stepmother and her father chose to give her in terms of being influencers. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think the same thing for like child actors, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we hear the stories of what happens
Mm-hmm.
as they
Mm-hmm.
get older. It's a blessing when they come out of it unscathed, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
child performers of any type that end up being thrust into the spotlight and becoming breadwinners, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's thing of, okay, you're still a child, but in some ways you have an adult
Mm-hmm.
responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what's really a thing, that just a refrain that kept playing in my head, like you've mentioned child actors and other child stars. They, at least, and I know they're still being reformed today, but at least they still had some kind of laws and like protections around them for the work that they were doing. Unfortunately, still, our laws have not caught up for influencing for children. We're
Right.
seeing more things nowadays, especially in other countries. But there's still no kind of universal laws that protect children who are dealing with this. And what we're also seeing now, which is the book is very timely. I've been writing it for a couple of years, but over the last, I want to say 6 months to 8 months, I'm seeing more and more articles and psychology content coming out around child influencers and people that have been children in a family vlogging household and how that's affected them. And I just think I'm glad people are starting to have that conversation now, whereas before we just accepted that it was kind of cute and normal. And a lot of the kids that have been in that position are actually like, well, no, it's not really, I didn't enjoy it, or I'm not enjoying it, but keep me anonymous because my parents have said that if I say anything, when I stop doing it, we'll lose the house, which is really sad to me.
Mhm.
Really, really sad. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. That is. And then, kind of like we talked about a little bit before, the fact that thinking of some of the complexes that children might have just because
Mm,
they're seeing and hearing all these things that people who are mean, I'm not even talking about the nefarious stuff that could be going on,
yeah.
but just the fact that people being mean, and saying things, and children seeing people who are still trying to evolve and grow and come into who they are, and yet they go online and they read some nasty comment about themselves. And
Exactly.
think about what all that really means.
Exactly. Like, I mean, adults are still affected by that kind of stuff.
That part.
Like grown people are still affected by comment. Grown people are looking at social media images and comparing themselves and their bodies and their faces and their hair and everything, clothes, everything, and thinking and feeling that they come up short. So I can't imagine what a child or a young person, a teenager or whatever, looking at these things and being the subject of those kind of comments and that kind of vitriol a lot of the time. And even if it's praise, I think, even if it's, a lot of the majority of it is praise, that also can have adverse effects on somebody. If you're
Right.
constantly being praised all the time just for existing, there's certain things that you will not learn, or certain negative things that you will learn as well. And these are things I didn't used to think about at all until I actually started researching the book. And in researching the book, what I found was that there wasn't a lot of research out there in terms
Right, I
of
was just about to ask you. You said
yeah.
research. Okay.
Mm. Yeah, there weren't a lot of peer-reviewed studies. There wasn't that much
Mhm.
out there. There's a lot more now, and more coming in every month, every day. But at the time I was like, I'm lacking. I can't find, you know, so I just had to, you know, a lot of my research was done on Reddit, believe it or not,
Mm.
because kids
Mm.
go on there and anonymously and talk about their experiences with their parents in this lifestyle. And some of it was very positive. A lot of it was very negative, which was sad. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something to really think about, you know, and the fact that, you know, you don't get to, your life is no longer your own because
Mm,
people, you know, and you touch on it in the book, people feel a familiarity with you because they're always
yeah.
seeing you, but you
Yeah.
know, but it's a one-sided thing because they're seeing
Mm,
you, but you know nothing about who they are, and they may come up to
ex-
you and make comments or say things about
mm.
whatever, and you're like,
Yeah, it's this concept of parasocial relationships. I think all of us kind of fall into a little bit, like even with like grown, you know, grown celebrities, like, you know, all of us kind of feel an affinity towards Beyonce and be like, oh yeah,
right.
that's my cousin, like we love that. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you know, again, these are children and young people, and it's a completely different kettle of fish when you're a 12-year-old and you have adults, not even other kids, but adults commenting and leaving comments about how you look and what you did in a video or a reel or a TikTok. And, you know, be it positive or negative, and saying, oh, you know, making demands on you. I want to see her in pink, or I want to see him in this next time. And it's just weird. Like I can't imagine
Yeah, it is.
how that must feel when that's your job and you're obligated to engage with that kind of you know, feedback from people who think they know you, but don't.
Yeah, that's something. Because one thing, you know, I will say, you know, of course, I'll use us as an example. We came on, it's like we know each other, but we really
Yeah,
don't know each other. You know
yeah.
what I mean? But, you
Mm,
know, there's familiarity from going back and forth and, you know, planning this event. But,
mm,
you know, when I do see people, I'm always very cognizant, even if I do kind of know them from the stuff that
yeah.
they choose to share, because there's that too. All we
Mm,
know is what people are choosing to share. But I still kind of, you know, I'm not like, hi, you know,
yeah.
whatever. But I make it you know, especially being in Atlanta, I run into people all the time that might be quote unquote famous or known.
Mm,
But I make, you know, purposefully do not try to like, run up on folks because I realize I
yeah.
don't really know them like that.
Exactly. Like, can you imagine? Like you're just out trying to, you know, get groceries or tampons or something, and then somebody will just come up and you be like, oh my god. And you know, and it could be they just want to share how much you've touched them or they appreciate you, but it still can be very jarring. And if they catch you
Mhm.
on the wrong day or at the wrong time, your face might just, you might have a look on your face. I know that's me because my face can't hide.
Yes,
It can't hide how I'm feeling, but you know, and next thing you know, people are writing threads about you on Twitter, you know, that
that part.
she's, you know, she's this, she's that, she's rude, she's, you know, she's smug, this and that, just because you caught me when I had period pains and I didn't want to engage. It's
Mhm.
just, you know,
You could have just had an argument with somebody or whatever.
exactly. You
So,
could have just lost some. Nobody knows the ins and outs of your life because, again, this is something I wanted to highlight in the book. These are very curated lives that people are presenting online. You do not know the ins and outs of their daily life. You don't know how people are really feeling or doing, or so on and so forth. And to be fair, I think that's fine. I think that's expected. I believe, as you know, the famous tweet goes, we should all know less about each other. I believe that fully. I
mhm.
really do. I do. Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely, we should know less than what we know.
We
Or
should
what
know
did they
less
say?
about
Less.
each other. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Say
There's certain
less,
things
know
I
less.
see online and I'm like, I don't need to know that about you. Like, I do
Right,
not need to know that about you at all. So yeah, again,
right.
amplified for children. So
Mhm, mhm. And just thinking about all of this, and this is a big thing that plays out in the book, is how all of this has impacted not only Anuri's growth and development, it also
mhm,
has impacted the relationships within her
mhm,
family. And
mhm,
that is something that I guess it's something to really think about, you know, that yes, all these things might have been great from the perspective of being able to make money and having
mhm,
certain opportunities and things like that. But with any thing that you do, there's a price to pay, and really determining, is this price, are the benefits worth, whatever is going to, are the costs worth the benefits, or the benefits worth the cost?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, again, we see it, sometimes we'll log on to Instagram and we might see someone in, I don't know, St. Barth or Turks and Caicos, and they're having the time of their life on a sponsored trip. And you think, God, I wish that would happen to me, or I could have that. And again, you just don't know what they've done or what's going on behind the scenes. And it's like you said, Anuri's relationships, the way that she is, and the things that she's lost and the things that she's gained are very they play out very clearly within the way that she relates to her dad and her stepmother and her auntie and her grandparents, and then her best friends, and even how she navigates romantic relationships, right? Because I maintain that your familial relationships will inform how you behave in romantic relationships and in friendships as well. And again, I made sure I did my best to make sure that we can see why Anuri behaves the way that she does when trying to navigate her friendships and her romantic relationships, because of what she's gone through and how she feels and the relationship that she has, or the lack of relationship that she has with her parents. So, yeah.
Right, because in this particular case, there is a level of distrust off the top.
Absolutely. If the two most important people in your life that have raised you are people that you cannot trust to have your best interests at heart, then how exactly are you supposed to trust anybody? So yeah, it's difficult, and you can come through that. And one of the big things that I wanted to highlight is that Anuri has taken steps to try and move past some of the familiar trauma that she's faced with things like therapy. Therapy plays a big part in the book.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And thank you for mentioning that, because I was going to bring that up. Once again, no spoilers. But, the fact that she does have someone that she can go and talk to, and that, will do that thing that therapists do. Not necessarily tell you what to do, but just really make you think about the choices that you're making.
Exactly. And we have that with our therapists, where you're just like, they'll say something and you'd be like, okay, you actually want to fight me, let's just fight. And it's that kind of push and pull, but loving, professional relationship that she has with her therapist, where she doesn't always listen because she's human and we're stubborn. But her therapist constantly reminds her that you do actually have choices now, and you can make decisions about your own life, and they're not always going to be right, but you do have the chance to rectify most things. And I think that it's important to highlight the importance of therapy with things like this, because friendships and romantic relationships and family are so important, but they will not hold the answers. They can, and love in all of its forms can be exceptionally healing, and is, but at the same time, that you're still going to need some tools to be able to manage some of the stresses and some of the curveballs that life throws at you that a hug may not cover. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
That is so important, because I always say, what are the tools in your tool chest that if something is happening, that you can go and grab, that tool and be able to, really to center yourself and, start to get, to where you want to be and come up with your answers and all of that sort of thing. Because the reality of it is, for each and every one of us, whoever it is that raised you, they may have, or even the people in your community, your friends, whatever, they may have one perception of who they think you should be, but who you want to be can be something totally different.
Exactly. And how do we, as people just that are on this floating rock of the sky, how do we respond to what is projected on us by other people? How is it something we lean into? Is it something that we shy away from? Is it a mixture of both? How do we manage that, especially when you didn't ask or you didn't put yourself in the position where those perceptions, you didn't ask for those perceptions. They've just been thrust upon you by nature of your job or by who you are, or your lineage, who family you've been born into. And I'm thinking about it now, and kind of even just with the books being published and having to have a slightly more public persona. I am such an introvert, and I don't leave my house unless it's to leave the country to go somewhere else.
Wow.
That's an exaggeration, like, obviously, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm a homebody. I prefer to be inside. I prefer to just, I love my own company, and having to step out of my comfort zone with this whole book thing and talk to new people, it's been fabulous, but it's been terrifying at the same time. But, I wonder sometimes I wonder the kind of perception that people have for me, but I don't seek it out because I know that would just send me down a whole rabbit hole that I wouldn't leave my room for the next.
That's true.
But, I still think, as Anuri does, I think it's important to step out of your comfort zone at times and push yourself past fears so that you can see what the next stage of your life or the next stage of your development will be.
That is so true. Because I'm smiling on the inside as well, because you said this isn't necessarily the thing that you want to do because you're an introvert. Even though I'm 4 years in of doing, like live shows and these interviews where I'm actually seen versus something that is only audio. It took me a long time to get to the point of doing it. For some of the same things that you talk about, because, you might think, oh, this person is more skilled than this, or this person is that, or this person looks a certain way, or this person has, or whatever. That whole thing of comparison, can really be a thing. But, coming into your own self and, standing up as you are and bringing your own gifts and talents to the world, that's such a blessing when you can do that.
Yeah. And, the platform that you've built is so important. Like, I'm truly thankful for people like you and the platforms that you've built, especially if it's something for us where we're not necessarily seen all the time in the most positive light. And a lot of the great things a lot of great stories and a lot of the great experiences that we can share with each other are not platformed. So for something like this, like when I was speaking, we were planning this, I was like, no, absolutely, this is one of the things that we'll 100% lean into. And I might not be the best interviewee, but I will speak from the heart. Do you know what I mean? So
give you something. You get two thumbs. You are doing fine, and this is I say it's like family here. If it was live, there'll be people in the comments chiming in, laughing, and giving all of that, because that's just the platform that I wanted to build. And thank you, for recognizing that, and again for taking time to be a part of it, because I know you are a busy global authoress, as they say.
Yeah.
So it's just the biggest thing. Reclaiming yourself, which leans itself back to allow me to introduce myself, just the name of the book. Reclaiming yourself and then showing up in the world as the person that you want to be, flaws and all.
Absolutely. And the title of the book is so important, because I was thinking, if I was Anuri, if I had lived this life or was living this life, what is the most important thing I'd want people to understand? And what I felt was that I'd love the opportunity to be able to tell people who I was from my own mouth, as opposed to what they've been spoon-fed or what they believe is the truth about me. So it just made sense. Allow me to introduce myself. Let me tell you who I am and where I've come from in my own words, as opposed to somebody else doing it for me in pictures or videos or whatever it is, blog posts. Let me come to you one-on-one, as opposed to you getting fragments of who it is that I really am. So, and, I think, again, there's a lesson in there for everyone, especially for myself. Again, like you mentioned, there's perception and there's these relationships that people feel that they've built with you, but to be given the opportunity to talk for yourself and say, this is who I am, and this is what's important to me, this is what I love, this is what I hate, this is how I show up, and I'm a perfectly imperfect human being, and that's fine. I think these are the most important kind of themes that I wanted to explore within the book as well. So yeah.
And again, everybody go grab a copy. Go ahead and pre-order, because you can still pre-order. The cover in the UK is different. So
it is different. It's bright yellow and pink. But I will be doing a giveaway for the UK cover for US readers, and vice versa for UK readers at some point. So if you like the UK cover, just look out for that on my socials. So
all right, which all those socials are at the bottom, so you can catch up and see what's going on there. So now, as people get a chance to read this book, what is one of the biggest things that you would like for them to take away from Allow Me to Introduce Myself?
I think one of the biggest things is I just want people to pause when they interact with child content online and think about it. That's one of the big things I want people to think about. But aside from that, I think the biggest takeaway that I'd like people to have is the importance of understanding yourself and being given the opportunity to show up as yourself in the world without anybody influencing that on you and projecting on you. Just given the room to be who you are. I think that's the big thing that I'd like people to understand. Yeah.
And understanding that in so doing, it's not always going to be easy.
It's not, and it's not always going to be pretty, and it's not always going to be perfect. It's not. Sometimes it's going to be a big old mess, actually, but that's fine. Who is perfect? Who among us is perfect?
Right. Because this journey is definitely not an easy one. It's not pretty. There's a whole lot of stuff that we did not tell you, because no spoilers.
No spoilers.
But yes, there's a lot going on that you will see as Anuri navigates getting to that place of being able to introduce herself back into the world. So yes, you are in for a ride. It's a good ride. Some things to cause you to think, to really look at, how, as you said, as Onyi has already said, how you interact with content that centers around children, maybe even how you present your own children or grandchildren, understanding that, we didn't get into this, but understanding that there are some things that go on that aren't necessarily so nice. And we want to protect our children as much as possible. So
absolutely.
Yes, it's definitely a good read. So now I would be remiss if I did not ask you about Black Pens. With those of you who are watching the scroll, you see Black Pens there as well. Tell us a little bit about that community.
So Black Pen started a couple of years ago. Like you said, I live in the UK, and there's lots of writing retreats that are based in the UK, and none of them kind of center around Black people or Black women especially. And I thought, what, it'd be nice. I've been to writing retreats and they've all been perfectly lovely. However, I said, what, I probably would be more inspired if I could just be amongst people that kind of look like me and, have dealt with some of the same things that I've dealt with. So I looked and I couldn't find anything like that in the UK. So I think I tweeted, I said, I'd love there to be a UK-based writing retreat for Black women, and hoping that somebody else would create it. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. The tweet kind of blew up, and people started, bullying me into like, well, you've said it now, so why don't you do it? And I was like, no, I wanted one of you to do it, but no. I kind of was gently bullied into starting something, and honestly, I didn't expect anything out of it. I said, let me just try and organize something small. Hopefully one or two people will be interested. What actually happened was that the first retreat sold out within 10 minutes. And I have had a waiting list of like 350 people, which has now swelled to about 750 people. So there's a big need for this within the UK. And so the first year I did 1. Last year I did 2. This year I don't think I'm going to be able to. Just with book commitments and work commitments, because I still have a 9 to 5, believe it or not. I just can you imagine? I just don't think that I'll be able to swing it this year. I hope that changes towards the end of the year, but I'll keep everybody posted. So if you're in the UK, keep your eye on the Black Pens accounts, and yeah, something might pop up before the end of the year. We never know. Fingers crossed, touch wood, that might happen. So yeah.
I have a question about it though, because as I mentioned, people watch from all around. We do have women from the UK. We have someone who watches regularly who's in South Africa, of course, the US, and I've interviewed people in Germany, all around. So is this program only open to people who live in the UK, or could someone potentially live someplace else and come to the UK to participate?
So it's primarily for people that live in the UK. However, if you grab a spot, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to say no. Like if you live in the States or anywhere in the world and you say you want to attend and feel like you can swing it, absolutely. Please don't let the fact that it's based in the UK, deter you from grabbing a spot if one's available. Like I'm not going to say don't come, like at all, not at all. So yeah, no, absolutely. Any Black woman or femme who wants to attend Black Pens can, no matter where you are in the world. Absolutely. It's just UK based. I may expand it to other countries at some point, but let me get a few of these under my belt within the UK first. So,
I definitely understand that. Now, you did bring up something, the whole thing of running a retreat, writing best-selling books. Okay.
Amen.
Amen. As well as holding a 9 to 5. So how do you balance all of that? What does your writing practice look like for those who are interested in writing?
The honest answer is I do not know how I balance it. I don't. And probably not well some of the time is the honest answer, actually. Sometimes I will get overwhelmed. I won't lie about that. And so I've become very, very intentional, especially with the second book and the lead up to the publishing, of carving out time to rest and to unplug completely, because there's always something going on. I always have emails and texts and this and this and that and work to do, and it can become completely overwhelming, and I don't want to burn out at all. So when it comes to having a writing schedule, if I have a deadline, then I know I have a deadline in terms of writing, and I will either first thing in the morning or as soon as I get off work, I'm carving out at least 2 hours to put some words down on paper. I no longer give myself a daily word count. It's too much pressure.
Okay.
It's too much pressure, and I end up hating the things that I write, and it could work for others. I'm speaking for myself, but the advice I would give you if you're trying to set a writing routine or schedule is just put something down on paper. It doesn't have to be 1,000 words a day. It could be a sentence. It could be a paragraph. It could be an entire chapter. Move as the spirit, leads you. Right. What I say about writing is that it has to exist. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist, because no matter how many drafts you do, when an editor gets hold of it, you will have to do some of it again. It doesn't matter how good it is. So just let it exist first, and don't beat yourself up about it. Don't become an enemy of your own writing. Don't become an enemy of your own progress because you want everything to be perfect. Just let it exist. So
I love it. Just let it exist. And last question about writing. So because you have other things going on, do you find yourself like having ideas and maybe jotting something down or putting it in notes or something like that? Or
absolutely. Like I have my notes app on my iPhone is full. Like in the middle of the night, I have to, if something comes to me in a dream, I have to wake up and write it, because otherwise I will never remember it. And I have a whole section in Microsoft OneNote of just snippets, and they might not be about anything. They might not be even relating to the book I'm writing. They just exist, and they're all there, and I can pluck from there wherever whenever I need something. I encourage all writers to do the same, and I encourage everybody to do the same, even if it's just thoughts that you have. because it's great to look back on something that has come to you, or something that your mind has woven together in your subconscious, and think, oh wow, I'm actually not bad at this. So yeah. Yeah.
I'm good for getting things when I'm walking, when I'm driving,
in the shower, grocery shop, like anytime. The inspiration can come at any time. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So yes, the notes app, and I do both voice notes sometimes as well, and then just kind of go back. Nowadays we have things that even if you do your voice, it can translate it into words for you. That way, yeah, there's so many different tools. But thank you so much, Onyi. It's been such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for talking about your second bestseller. We'll be looking for more and more to come as the days go by. And for everyone, as we mentioned, it is still in pre-order at this point, but you can go to your favorite bookseller to find copies. That'll be out on the 23rd in the UK, if you're in the UK, on the 28th of May, if you're here in the US.
And if you're in New York, I will be coming to New York at the end of this month. I will be in New York for the launch, so you might see me around. Just keep an eye out on my social. Might be around.
Okay, yes, please follow her socials to see where she's going, when and where she's going to be, especially here in the US, for those of you who are based here. And then, of course, I threw up the Brown Girl Collective bookstore. That is another place where you can pre-order and find the book as well. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate you. It has indeed been a pleasure, and I hope that this is the first time, but not the last time, that we get a chance to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute delight. Please do invite me back, because this has been fantastic. I've had a great time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So hold on for just one second, everybody, and just look forward to seeing us again next week. You